Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Game Changer. I'm Mariam Zia. In today's program, we will be talking about Pakistan's stance on two important issues. Of course, when we talk about the rights of Kashmiris as well as the rights of the innocent Palestinians and people who are being killed in Gaza daily. Of course, Pakistan's stance on global stage is very important, and Pakistan is calling out the genocide when we talk about the rights of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir as well as people in Gaza. In today's program, we will also be drawing the similarities as well as the contrast between the personalities of both the leaders, that is Modi as well as Netanyahu, and how their implementing strategies are different or similar when we talk about otherization of Muslims within the regions. We will be talking about the impacts of these strategies within both regions as well as for the global prosperity and global peace as well. Of course, Pakistan has always advocated for the rights of innocent Palestinians, and of course in his recent visit to Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Prime Minister Kakar was very vocal when he said that of course that Muzaffarabad is not Gaza and New Delhi is not Tel Aviv. This is important statement. We will be of course dissecting this statement as well, and implications of the regional dynamics on Pakistan as well as on global prosperity and peace as well. Later in the program, we will be talking about of course the visit of Chief of Army Staff Syed Asim Munir to United States as well. He held important meetings with key leadership of US in Washington. We will be exploring how significant is this meeting for Pakistan-US relations as well as for the region. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Syed Muhammad Ayub Shah, who is of course commentator on international affairs and senior analyst. Welcome to the program. We are also joined by Mr. Shahriyar Khan, who is commentator international affairs and senior analyst. Welcome to the program. And we are joined online by Dr. Hasnain Javed, who is economist and senior analyst. Welcome to the program. Of course, Ayub Shah Saab, let me start with the basic statement. Of course, in his recent visit to Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Prime Minister Kakar was very vocal when he drew similarities between aggression of India in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir as well as of course Israeli aggression on Gaza, and he stated that Muzaffarabad is not Gaza and New Delhi is not Tel Aviv. How do you categorize this statement and how significant is this for Pakistan's global stance specifically on Kashmir issue?
Thank you very much for the question, ma'am. Of course, Pakistan is a peace-loving country. Pakistan promotes democracy, and exactly opposite is the Indian, which has a history of denying human rights to the people in Kashmir, forcefully occupying the Kashmiri territory against the will of the people of the Kashmir, as well as will of the people of the world, and total denial of the United Nations Security Council resolutions upon Kashmir. So they are refusing to hold a plebiscite, and their recent move by abrogating their article on Kashmir and changing the status of the Kashmir from a state to a union territory is totally unlawful as far as the international law is concerned. And there is no difference between the cause that the Pakistan pursues for the Kashmir and the cause that the Pakistan pursues for the Palestine. Palestine people are again under occupation. West Bank is a totally occupied territory. They were reduced to the Gaza Strip, and again not only reduced, the recent aggression is totally inhuman, excessive of any definition of the right of self-defense. It has totally caused a mayhem to the Gaza people, to the Palestinian people. Killing of the women and children are by no means a human action or a self-defense action or an action by a legitimate state. They have proved their illegitimacy, they proved their the wrongness of the claim on the Palestine, their occupation of the Palestine being totally totally against the will of the people of the world who aspire peace and democracy around the world. Right. And same is the case of the Kashmir. So there's a big similarity between Palestinian cause and the Kashmiri cause.
Right. So, Mr. Shahryar, can you elaborate on the key similarities that you see between the attitudes of both the leaders, that is Modi and Netanyahu, and how they are, of course, impacting their own, of course, not only the social structure of their countries, but of course the world peace as well?
So, Mariam, when it comes to similarities, by the way, these two leaders have been treating the whole Kashmir and the Palestine issue. I personally think India has taken a lot of motivation in the way Israel suppresses the Palestinian population, and they're applying the same model.
And they're given
impunity by the, a lot of international powers,
yes,
and their Western backers. That whole framework is now being applied to the people of Kashmir. A lot of international human rights organizations, they basically call Kashmir world's largest prison. And that population is being controlled by over 800,000 troops. That is like suppressing all dissent. There are human rights abuses. There are extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearances. There is a media blackout, and there is no freedom of expression or speech. Prime Minister Kakar also said something very interesting. He basically said that India projects itself as world's largest democracy, while in reality it's the world's largest hypocrisy. When we talk about the spirit of democracy, it's people who basically choose who they want to be governed by and what system they would want to be governed by. So this goes against the whole principle of democracy and the right of people to choose. Again, there are international UN resolutions which basically give people the right to basically self-determine on how they will be governed. So when it comes to similarities between the way President Netanyahu and Prime Minister Netanyahu and Prime Minister Modi, they basically operate with impunity when it comes to these populations, that is like a huge question mark when it comes to international human rights conventions. The way selective morality and selective rule of law is being conducted across the world. And this gives impunity, and this gives motivation to, I would say, dictators of the developing country, not Prime Minister. I personally don't think India is now a democracy. It's basically an autocracy. When one party basically controls the bureaucracy, we saw the decision by the Indian Supreme Court. That basically means that the Supreme Court of India is a biased institution, which is giving these judgments to provide Mr. Modi with an edge when it comes to the upcoming elections.
Right.
So this basically means that one political party is controlling the whole democratic structure of India.
And there are even very important point highlighted that there are even groups and lobbies that are backing and standing behind these decisions made by both leaders in their respective countries. So Dr. Stan, how do you see the role of course, these individual groups as well as lobbies, as well as of course, like in India's case as well as in Israel's case, the judicial system backing this historical myth of Hindu Zionist supremacy and its myth? How do you think it influences the whole paradigm?
That is very important question, but before that, I just wanted to say that Pakistan strongly rejected the rumor of any change in Pakistan's policy to follow the suit India to merge the Azad Jammu and Kashmir in it. He said, no one can think of such stupid act, nobody can dare. So the India rumor mills continue to spew hearted and misinformation to create misunderstanding. We must always remember that the Pakistan had principled journey with the Kashmiris for the decades, backed by the sacrifice of 90,000 people. By overtly sided with the Israel, India has dished decades of the Middle East statesmanship. Clearly, it suits the BJP to conflate the ramped anti-Muslim climate that it is creating. The portrayal of the latest conflict, Gaza, as Hamas handiwork. Fully supported by the right-wing media, the BJP coalition and government will, in my view, surely further marginalize the minorities and particularly Muslim in coming weeks and months. But as far as concerned the India war crimes in Kashmir, that is very much important. We must have to remember this. After India revoked Article 370 in 2019, stripping Kashmir of its special status of autonomy, it also increased its military presence in the region, raising major question. India administered Kashmir is one of the world's most militarized area, and more than 90,000 Kashmiris had been killed, and over 1,500 faced forced disappearance and pellet gun injuries, and thousands of the women suffered rape, while the human rights abuses were also documented in 2 of the UN reports. And according to the government data, around 41,000 people consisting of the 14,000 civilian and 55,000 security personnel and 22,000 militants have been died because of the injuries as of March of 2017, with most of these deaths having taken place in 1990s and in early 2000s. So according to the 2022 report by Amnesty International, repression by the Indian government has intensified in the region after the abrogation of the Article 370 in 2019, and you are very right at this point.
Right, right. So, Ayub Shah Sahab, how do you see that, of course, otherization of the Muslims as well as Islamophobia plays a role when we talk about the implementation strategies of both the countries and both the leaders, Modi and Mr. Netanyahu, in their respective countries, and how this is, of course, shifting the social fabric of both the countries as well?
Yes, unfortunately, both the leaders, they have taken up genocide as an instrument of implementation of their policies. Narendra Modi has a history of genocide in Gujarat. He is totally alienating Muslims in India. He's also alienating other nationalities, and they themselves are suffering because of this, but unfortunately Modi is not realizing, and the same plea has been taken up, it's both vice versa, has been taken up by the Mr. Netanyahu, who is now embarked upon genocide of the innocent Palestinians. He is using force, unstoppably against the armless people, against the harmless people rather. This theme is common between both the two leaders, who think that the genocide is the only solution, exclusion is the only solution, alienation of the Muslims populations is the only solution for furthering with their own ambitions. But this will not work in the long run, and they're exposing their own selves. And now it's well exposed to the world that they are the people not for the democracy, not for the humanity, not for the peace, rather for the belligerence, and violence.
Of course, but Shahryar, when we talk about the historical context, of course we know that in 1938 Mr. Gandhi supported the cause of Palestinians, and till late 90s, India was supporting the rights of Palestinians for their own state. So how do you see this shift in both the strategies of both these countries, that now India is one of the largest buyer of Israeli weapons, and how this is impacting, of course, their own designs in repression of the Muslims in their own respective countries?
So, Mariam, that's a very interesting question, and to answer that question you have to see how the Indian political society has evolved during the years. Interestingly enough, ever since the RSS has gained popularity, the right-wing Hindutva ideology, which basically believes that the Hindus are superior and these are the original people of this homeland, that's what they actually believe in. So when it comes to Islamophobia and the rest of the minorities, we have to keep in mind that it's not just the Muslims. Interestingly enough, the population of Muslims in India is larger than Pakistan's population.
Of course.
So it's one of the largest minorities, and then there are like other minorities there as well. So when it comes to the whole history in which we talk about Gandhi, and Gandhi is revered globally as a progressive person. And now this new ideology which BJP is the face of, when it comes to RSS, they are indulging in revisionizing the history of India. So they are changing the textbooks of India, and they are very anti-Gandhi, by the way. So when you basically see that how did India evolve from a progressive phase, they're like also kind of like putting Nehru on the backside as well, because they are now basically saying it was Nehru's fault that he basically took the Indian issue or the Kashmiri issue to the United Nations, and he betrayed the Indian nation. So this is how they are revising the history of India.
And the same law we are witnessing in Israel as well, that their nation state law that is against the Arab minority that they claim to be is against. So these are some of the similarities.
So one very horrible thing that I also want to tell, the ethnic cleansing. that basically takes place in Israel. So Israel justifies it by settlements in Palestinian areas. So they basically go to a Palestinian territory and they ask the people to leave, and then they raze those buildings to the ground, and then they resettle people with Jewish heritage there. So this is like the starkest form of ethnic cleansing that is taking place. And if you compare this similarly in Kashmir, what they're now doing is, after the revocation of the Article 370
and 35A,
Kashmir was a Muslim majority area, and now they're trying to change the demographics of that, which is illegal under international law.
There are a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
So when we say that they are chip of the same block, it is justified.
It is very justified, and this evolution in the Indian society towards right-wing Hindutva ideology is, I think, like 20 years old.
Yes.
And I was like looking at various UN charters and conventions. Historically, India used to support Palestine.
Yes,
and
that's
historically,
what we were discussing.
and this
yes.
changed in the last 30 years when this
Yes.
right-wing ideology has taken over.
Even the formal diplomatic relations were not established until the 90s.
Exactly.
Between,
And this
Israel
changed.
yes.
And this changed. And then they basically justified it, and they started using the same framework that Israel was using in Palestine, and they copy-pasted it, and they applied it into Kashmir. And why did they do that? Because of the silence of the international community.
Yes.
When international law, international human rights conventions, and the rights of people are selectively applied, then fascist regimes basically see that as motivation, and they basically say, okay, like it's been done in the Middle East, why don't we apply the same framework here as well? Israel is an economic power over there. We are aspiring to be economic power here. So if you have like economic power, you can trample human rights, you can trample international conventions. UN Charter doesn't mean anything. So this is the motivation that the Indian government, the face of which is like Narendra Modi now,
and this is the
they're applying it.
justification
This
that
is
they
how
use.
they're justifying
Of course,
it now.
and Dr. Sain, talking about the breaches of international laws, of course, Pakistani Foreign Minister Mr. Jalil Abbas Jilani also wrote letters to international organization and world leaders as well. Can you tell us about the specific breaches of Resolution 122 that were, of course, highlighted by a foreign minister in these letters?
So the most important thing is they have picked up these articles, and in front of the face of the face of it is the very important thing is that the principal decision by Pakistan. And Pakistan's principal decision is that the question which they answer is the question posed was, are we fight the war to make Kashmir part of KPK or the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa? And the PM has straightforward answer to the that question, and our foreign minister's answer to that question, which is the principal statement by Pakistan, of course, and under the national security of Pakistan, this is out of question. So the word knows Pakistan revolved of the no budging an inch from its principal position. The only solution to the Kashmir dispute was to hold a referendum as per the United Nations Security Council's resolution. And the second most important principal decision, what they have answered to that question, is the Prime Minister confirmed that Pakistan would continue to raising the voice against Israel to help to support Palestine. Pakistan had sent a field hospital and doubled its humanitarian assistance for the Palestinian people. And like the rest of the world people, Pakistan is also pushing and hoping for an immediate focus should be to achieve ceasefire and establishment of the humanitarian coordination. So this is very much important. We have, on the table, we let them know that our principal decision is very much clear. We don't want, India and Israel has the idea of the territorial and economic penetration. We don't have any idea of any territorial penetration, or rather not in any of the criminal way of the economic penetration, or whether it is the criminal way of the, like for example, or the IT base or the other ways of the economic criminality. So the India and Israel have the idea of the territorial and economic penetration. Pakistan don't have any intention to do that.
Of course, Pakistan has very clearly talked about these rumors. But let's talk about the issue of Jammu and Kashmir in the broader context of geopolitics of South Asia. How significant is it for Pakistan to raise this issue at, of course, the global stage?
Jammu and Kashmir is a very important part of South Asia. It is not only important for the India and Pakistan, it's also important for China. And the dispute is a trilateral. It's all three countries are affected by it. And apart from that, it has a historical linkage to Pakistan. The accession instrument was signed by the Kashmiri Maharaja on the account that it will be a state, you know. So not only that the entire definition of the value of the international instruments is getting violated, but also that the system, the international system is getting changing, which is not good for the humanity to prosper on this planet. Peace is something fundamental to the human existing on this planet, and you know, if you do not follow those instruments which are meant to maintain peace around, the peace will get disturbed. Jammu and Kashmir has caused 3 wars, you know, and Jammu and Kashmir is an ideological issue, and Jammu and Kashmir is also is a humanitarian issue because of the violations of the human rights by the Indians. There are 2 explicit reports in the UN Security Council against the India for having violated the human rights, and there's a prolonged curfew going on there, and there is a complete denial of the rights of the self-determination, which the India unfortunately calling themselves as democracy, I don't know how. They are denying the democratic right of the Kashmiris to. So the overall definition of the democracy will get challenged. The overall definition of the peace maintenance, the overall definition of the accession of a territorial geopolitical state to a particular other state or to form their own government will get challenged because of the wrong decision by the Modi Sarpur regime, which is which has set aside the constitutional provisions keeping the Kashmir as a state, and no other than this is the case of the Palestinians. They are just the like cases, where the denial of the basic rights and expanding the territory by the use of the force and through genocide and changing the equations demography is the instrument now being used by the unfathomables.
Right. Shehzad, lastly, as we see that the death toll is rising every day in Palestine, and of course in besieged Gaza the death toll has risen above 18,000 now. So how do you see Pakistan's call for investigation by the International Criminal Court into the war crimes? What measures are needed? And also we are expecting another resolution put forth in the United Nations Security Council today as well. So what are your expectations from that?
So
can we expect a different result or outcome?
Mariam, unfortunately, I would basically say that the United States has a huge moral responsibility when it comes to checking the behavior of Israel. When it comes to the permanent members of the United Nations, any resolution can be vetoed by the 5 permanent members, the P5. Up till now, all of these resolutions have been vetoed by the US alone. A lot of other countries have changed their stances during these last 2 or 3 months. When it comes to the death toll, when it comes to trampling of the international law, now the biggest influence that over Israel, if we talk about one country, that's the United States. United States is providing them with material support, they're providing them with economic support, and they're also providing them with military support. So
what about Pakistan's call for investigation by ICC for the war crimes?
So that is completely justified. And
what needs to be done? What other countries? Of course, a lot of countries, as well as international human rights organizations, as well as of course organizations like Journalists Without Borders are asking for these investigations by ICC. And recently, a journalist of Al Jazeera was killed, and Al Jazeera has also filed a complaint in ICC. So, do you see a way forward?
So, Mariam, now the death toll when it comes to journalists is over 90. So, it's 90 journalists that have been killed. Over 90, yes. So probably now that must be touching over 100. When it comes to the death toll of children, that's more horrific. When it comes to the killing of unarmed civilians, so yesterday, Israel, in one of their operations, killed their own hostages, 3 of them.
3, yes.
And they were raising white flags. So, when it comes to the rules and business of war, if anyone raises a white flag, you're not allowed to. It's a war crime to basically shoot at them or kill them. and Israeli army. So that like gave
these are clear indications
that
of
war crimes are being committed.
So do you expect ICC to take some account into these?
So I think like countries that are basically fighting for the cause of human rights, fighting for the cause of the Palestinian people, it's a moral responsibility on them to take this cause and pressurize the international community for a war tribunal to be established, and the international ICC should be investigating it. And all these countries should collectively raise their voice to start this investigation. If we are like sitting here and like thinking that the Western countries will basically take this into ICC, then I think like, you know, we're not like dealing with reality. So this will be more on the onus or the shoulders of the countries that are supporting the right cause and supporting the rights, international human rights conventions. So when we talk about European countries, when we talk about Western countries, they already have a soft corner when it comes to Israel because of the history that like flows from the Second World War. But when it comes to countries in the Middle East, when it comes to powerful economic countries in the GCC and countries that have a principled stance led by Pakistan, these are the countries. And when it comes to OIC, which is a huge and very powerful bloc, OIC also needs to pressurize the international community. When it comes to European unions, they're like the flag bearers of international human rights.
Of course.
When it comes to developing countries, even
Right,
Pakistan,
of course.
they link everything to upholding human rights. And when it comes to human rights in Israel, Palestine,
of course, there's need for practical implementations when we talk about the issue of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, as well as the innocent Gazans being killed in Palestine daily. Of course, now we will be moving forward and we will be talking about the recently concluded visit of Chief of Army Staff General Syed Asim Munir to Washington, where he met with key leadership. So, Dr. Stan, when we talk about this key visit, of course, this is an important visit in the light of the important demographic as well as, of course, the strategic shifts that we are witnessing, and of course the conflicts within the region and beyond, as well as Pakistan's own economic situation as well as the security situation. How do you categorize or analyze the outcomes of this key visit?
I would, segregate into the three areas. Like one is the matter of bilateral interest, second is a global and regional security issue, and ongoing conflicts. So these three important issues are way too important to discuss with America. So the General Syed Asim Munir, the Chief of Army Staff, met the very important people by the America, like for example, Antony Blinken, Secretary of State, General Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, Victoria Nuland, Deputy Secretary of State, Jonathan Feiner, Deputy National Security Advisor, and the General Charles Q. Brown, the Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff. These are all important in any of all these, three segregated terms. The matter of the bilateral interest, global and regional security issue, and the ongoing conflict. So the US has agreed to continue engagement for exploring potential avenues of bilateral collaboration in pursuit of shared interests. During the defense meeting, the counter-terrorism cooperation and defense collaboration were identified as a core area of cooperation. Pakistan is looking to increase interaction and explore ways to expand the scope of mutually beneficial engagements. And the regional security is very much important. So, Chief of Army Staff, I really appreciate he discussed the importance of understanding US perspective on the regional security issue and developments, and sharing Pakistan's side of the lens facing the strategic stability in the South Asia. It was imperative to highlight the importance of resolving the Kashmir issue in accordance with the international law and relevant UNSC resolution. And I am glad that this Chief of Army Staff has continued to the voice of Kashmir. That is very, very, very important. And the Chief of Army Staff also interacted with the Pakistani overseas community, which is very much important. During a reception hosted by the Embassy of Pakistan,
we will be talking about the economic relations between both the countries, and of course the mention of SIFC as well. But Shehjar, when we talk about this recent visit and in the aftermath of Afghan situation and the failure of Afghan leadership to keep the promises with the international community, how significant is this visit specifically when we see the rise in terrorism originating from that border? How significant was the discussion and specifically when we talk about the illegal migrants that are being sent back to the country?
So Mariam, this is a very important question, and this is basically the crux of the whole meeting between the visit of our army chief to the US. Now when it comes to the threat posed to Pakistan by TTP, what we have to realize that it's a national security issue for Pakistan, and this is also linked to the national security of the US as well. When it comes to terrorist organizations, transnational terrorist organizations operating from Afghanistan soil, this is a clear violation of the Doha Agreement that was signed by the Taliban government. And they're not like abiding by...
And the weapons that we are seeing with them,
very disturbing.
Yes.
That is very disturbing, and that has basically given them an asymmetric advantage over our forces. When it comes to long-range rifles, night vision equipment, and this is very sophisticated machinery that the US basically left behind. And I was looking at one of the press conferences, and the representative of the US government basically said, we didn't leave it for the Afghan Taliban. We left it to the Afghan National Defense Forces, and they basically gave it to the Taliban when they basically surrendered. And now Pakistan is like asking for cooperation when it comes to
Right. So how significant was this specific meeting with the, of course, defense leadership of US in Washington by Chief of Army Staff?
So Pakistan basically took its case, and they basically said, if we have to counter this threat which is emanating from the Afghanistan's soil, we need equipment, we need support, and due to the fact that Pakistan is going through an economic crisis of its own, we can't really afford to have like a large-scale military operation like Zarbul Azab, Raudul Fasad.
And we can't afford another
surge of terrorism as well. And you see like the elections are around the corner as well. And if these areas like the former FATA region, KP, areas of Balochistan, if they're not like secure, then it will be very difficult to like for civilians to basically take this whole like process forward. So Pakistan needs support when it comes to international community, and a joint effort that they go to the Afghan interim government and they basically pressurize them on reining in these transnational terrorist organizations operating from their soil. What I basically see now, there are a lot of like regional countries are bilaterally talking to the Afghan Taliban in their own interests. The US has an interest that ISKP shouldn't be allowed to operate from that soil and conduct operations in Western countries. But we have to see that there are like 10 other militant organizations operating there as well. And TTP is attacking Pakistan. If it's not attacking the US basically thinks, or the Western countries think, that is Pakistan's problem.
So defense collaboration is important.
Defense collaboration is needed.
Of course, moving forward, what other potential areas or avenues of cooperation you see emerging after this important visit of Chief of Army Staff to Washington?
Yes, United States is a very important stakeholder as far as the global economy is concerned, and as far as the Pakistan's economy is also concerned, because we have a huge, about more than 25% exports going to the US, they're destined there. And then we have a very potentially sound and intellectually sound also diaspora residing in the US who can play their role to bring up the national economy of Pakistan. The engagement of all these stakeholders, both the industry as well as diaspora as well as other avenues by the Chief of Army Staff, highlighting the role of SIFC is a worth praising step, and that is likely to yield its own benefits. US can play its role many folds, in other areas also. Peace is a prerequisite for the economic growth of the world. And peace is also a prerequisite for the growth of the Pakistan in the modern days to come. So US can help us both in maintenance of peace, engaging the Afghan government from a third dimension, as discussed earlier, and as well as making the environment conducive when it comes to the Middle East and other regions are concerned for the Pakistan, and helping Pakistan to promote its exports.
Right. Dr. Hassan, lastly, how do you see that this important visit of Chief of Army Staff aligns with Pakistan's own efforts to, of course, explore other avenues of cooperation between Pakistan and United States?
See, the most important thing is that US-Pak relationship, or all the developments which is, territorial or other thing. But before that, we also take the case of the United Nations, what they have, the leading investors in Pakistan for past 20 years. And it will give us the boost because US direct investment in Pakistan increased by 50%. So it is now the highest it has been over the decades. So the major US investment are concentrated in the consumer goods, chemical, energy, agriculture, business process, outsourcing, transportation, and communication. So the Pakistan annual report to the United States increased by 35% to $9 billion in 2021-2022. So we have to capitalize this way, and they are. The chief of armies have also discussed these area. If the export continues to grow at the rate of 35% per year in the next 3 years, overall Pakistan-US trade volume would cross 20 billion. So US is the largest export market of
Right.
Pakistan and consisting of 21.5% of the total export. But the chief of army staff also dispelled rumor about the special screening denial of the visas and detentions. Pakistan is the fifth largest country in the world by population and ranked as 44th economy according to the IMF. So, despite all the recent challenges, current affairs have produced a series of high-level diplomatic engagements and dialogues focused on the trade, energy. But the very important thing is two significant development and qualitatively shifted the security and terrorism-oriented framework in the US-Pakistan relationship took place from the 21 to 2021, increasing
Right.
amenity between the United States and China, Pakistan's key ally, and US military withdrawal from Afghanistan. So I believe these will continue to be the key factor in the US
Of course,
relation,
these
forcing
are key
Pakistan to the
factors.
foreign office.
Unfortunately, we are running out of time. Dr. Sain Javed, thank you very much for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Sayyid Muhammad Ayub Shah, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Mr. Sharyar Khan, for joining us in today's program. Of course, in today's program, we discussed about important dynamic shift in the globe, and these are significant, and of course, about the significant visit of Chief of Army Staff to Washington as well. Both countries agreed to explore avenues of cooperation for shared, of course, interests and benefit. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.